On this episode of the Law of Relevancy podcast, I have a very special guest. I have Eva Maria Brown. Eva is 100 years old this year, and she is a Hungarian survivor of the Holocaust. Eva, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So I love World War II history, and I love the stories of adversity and the triumph and the most difficult, most adverse situations. Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like in your late teen years and in your 20s growing up in Hungary?
What would you like to know?
Well, obviously there was a lot going on in Hungary when you were in your high school years. And what was it like seeing the country change with the Germans coming in and being a more prominent?
Being afraid.
Yeah.
We were very much afraid.
How did, as a Jewish person growing up in that environment, how did your friends and family deal with that fear?
Well, we denied it.
You denied it?
Yes. And I came from the area where the Jews were deported to Auschwitz, which was a very scary situation.
The Jews that were collected and sent to Auschwitz, did they know where they were going?
Well, when I was caught to be a Jew, I tried to talk to people who are not drinking, because most of the Hungarians are drunk. And a person who drinks a lot do not have the same outlook of life, the one who do not drink.
Yeah.
So when I watched them, who is drinking, who is not, I went to the guy and I asked him if he has a daughter. He says, yes. I said, please don't let them kill me. I am the only child of my mother. And he wanted to take over my future. They told him he's not trustworthy enough. He is too soft-hearted. And he would have me saved when I supposed to take him to the Danube and shoot as a Jew. So that was sad, as much as serious.
Tell us about the day that they wanted to take the Jews down to the Danube and execute them.
That wasn't all the Jews, it was me.
It was just you.
Yeah,
Why did they single you out?
I have no idea. I don't know.
And they just suspected you of being a Jew?
I don't know if I looked like one. How does a Jew look like? Have a large nose? I mean,
You could be hanging out with friends that are also Jewish.
yeah.
And so that day they brought you to the Danube and they told you that they were going to kill you. How did you get out of that situation?
Well, I knew actually what they wanted from me. So I tried to put my conversation into that situation. And I said to him, I said, if I am gone, you don't be here for your pleasure. Which we know what one would be.
Right. So you did whatever it is that you could figure out to do
Yeah.
to to make him want you to be around.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how long did that last?
I don't know.
Was it weeks?
No, months.
So for months,
Months.
several Nazis kept you. And what year was this?
What year?
Yeah.
44.
So this would have been in 1944. Was it in the springtime or the winter?
I think it was in the fall.
In the fall of 44. So in the fall of 1944, things were starting to look bleak for the Germans around that time. It was after D-Day.
Well, we were worried more about the Nazis than the Germans.
You know, that's interesting because a lot of times when I'm, conversating about World War II, a lot of times I'll just say, like, the Germans. But you're right. There is a distinction between the Nazis and the Germans,
Yeah.
right? So so in the fall of 1944, what was happening with the Nazis in Hungary?
Well, I really don't know.
Okay. So in the spring of 1944, our history books tell us there was a massive collection of Hungarian Jews by the Nazis, and they were sending them to concentration camps. Did you have any friends or family that were caught up in that?
I did have some families, yes, and they never came back.
Yeah.
But my mother and my aunt stayed in Budapest, and I had a business, and I had customers who had a villa in the suburbs, and they allowed me to put my family into that villa, which is supposed to be an unlived place, meaning that they lived at night, cooked at night, so the smoke would go seen during the day.
Yeah.
And it was a good way to get away.
How far outside of Budapest was this house?
A villa, suburbs.
It was a suburb of Budapest. And so would y'all take a car to the house?
Well,
Ride a bike?
Yes.
And so your job during the war, what did you do in Budapest?
First of all, I was a dressmaker like my mother.
Okay.
And then I did interior designing, which was very successful and plenty of money, which I looked for.
So you had a good career.
I did, yes.
So how did it end with the Nazis and you? Did they leave? Were they killed? How did it end? How did everything stop? How were you freed?
I am here.
Yeah,
That's what was the most important thing, to get away.
that's right. So how did you escape?
I was very coquette. You know what it was, coquette? Flirty.
Okay.
And made them feel that if I am here, you will have a good time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I get away.
And so that kept you alive.
Yes.
And during that time when you were able to keep yourself alive, which was heroic, you know, when you look back on it, because so many people didn't resist, didn't try to survive.
Well, number one, when the Nazis came in, I get myself false papers. And we had a cleaning woman in the house, and I asked her if she would let me have her daughter's papers. And her name was Susan. And I was not Eva, I was Susan after that.
And so that was early on.
Early on, yes.
So during the time that the Nazis were in Budapest, it sounds to me like they might not have even suspected of you being Jewish.
Well, I would not be expected unless my roommate told on me.
Mm-hmm. So that's an amazing survival instinct that you have.
Yeah.
What was it like being there during that time and seeing your community be so massively affected by the way the Nazis were doing things?
What was the question?
What was it like? So when you were living in the 40s in Budapest, in the 1940s, as you would have been 19 or 20 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And what was it like seeing the way that things were changing so fast during the war?
Well, it was very worrisome.
Worrisome. And so you made it through the war, and you survived, and Hungary signed an armistice with the Soviet Union.
The Russians came in and
That's right.
saved us.
That's right.
Yes.
And so what was it like being liberated by the Russians?
Also has to be very careful.
Mm-hmm.
Because Hungarian men and Russian men are alike. All want one thing.
Okay. That might be all men. Yeah.
So you had to be smart enough to handle yourself
Yeah.
for your advantage,
Right.
which I had.
Okay.
I looked out for number one, which was me.
And so when the Russians liberated Budapest, what was that like? Did y'all feel amazing? Was it a big celebration?
Well, they said to me, come into the other bunker with me. Come into the other bunker with me.
Mm-hmm.
I said, tomorrow. Not today, tomorrow.
Right.
And tomorrow came, and early in the morning, I ran away. I escaped. So I never went to the bunker with them.
That's good. That's very smart of you.
Yeah.
So at the end of the war, with the Russians liberating Hungary, and with freedom coming back to Hungary, well, first of all, was it free? With the Russians being there, was it free, or was it just a different kind of an occupation?
It was a different, it wasn't free. The Russians looked out for the Russians.
Yeah,
And the Hungarians looked out for the Hungarians.
yeah. So how long did you stay in Hungary after World War II?
I don't know.
A few years?
No, I would say a few months
Okay. Where did you want to go?
to the U.S. I went to the consulate, and my future husband, Richard Brown, was at the consulate. And the consul said to him, Mr. Brown, be careful. These Hungarian girls, all they want to do is marry an American and come to the United States, which was me.
You had a plan.
I had a plan. That it turned out to be love is a different story. But even if I wouldn't love him, I would be here today.
Right. Well, it's very resilient of you. I like that. So when you put together your plan about how you were going to make it to the United States, and you did it, how did you feel when you finally got here to the USA?
Well, my father had a cousin whose name was George Alexander. And he and my husband's family, waited for me at the airport. And George said, are you coming with him or are you coming with me? I said, what a question. Of course I'm going with him. He's my husband.
Yeah. That's great. And so you started a new life here in America?
Yeah.
And did you continue to do some of the same career that you had had?
I dropped the sewing, and I went more forceful with interior design. I did the country club of Southampton, and many wealthy people. I charged a lot of money.
That's fantastic. I love that story.
Yeah.
We interview a lot of entrepreneurs on this show.
Yeah.
So what were some things that you feel like you took from that experience of resilience? How did that show up in the rest of your life?
Well, I don't know how to answer that.
What were some lessons that you learned during the conflict in World War II that you've kept with you? What were some of the things that you've learned that you've been able to use throughout the rest of your life?
I try to be staying smart because that was important, how you handle yourself in the future with other problems which might come up.
Yeah. You seem to be very good at being able to look ahead into the future and predict and take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Were there any other times where you felt like throughout your life later on, once you got to the United States, where you did that?
I'm sorry.
Trying to, I'm impressed with your ability to recognize the situation that you, that was unfolding before you in Hungary. And what advice would you give to others to be able to read the tea leaves or to help understand that, like, hey, something doesn't feel right, something is worrisome? What advice would you give to others to be able to recognize the seriousness of a situation before it gets
My
very
advice
serious?
would be not to let yourself talked out of anything. You have a plan, stuck with it. Because my plan was to marry an American, as I said, to come to the United States. That he was good looking and loving, that was a plus.
That's great. And I'm assuming that's Peter's father?
Yes.
So your son, how many children do you have?
2.
You have 2 children. Did your children know that what you had been through?
No, they didn't know they were Jewish because we denied it. we were worried that it will come back again and hunt them.
Do you still worry whether or not that might happen
Oh,
again?
definitely, definitely, definitely. Yeah. They didn't know they were Jewish until, how old were you, 30 something?
35.
All their friends were Jewish,
Yeah.
and they didn't know they were Jewish.
And so when you told your family that your family was Jewish, what happened next?
He was upset that all my friends were Jewish, and I thought I would have married a Jewish girl if I know I was Jewish. Did you say that? Yes.
I escaped from that.
Yeah.
I got lucky.
What made you finally decide to tell your children that they were Jewish?
What made me finally decide?
Do you remember what that moment was like?
I think I learned about it when I was 35 when we went to Budapest.
I wrote a book.
In 1985 or so.
Your father wrote a book.
I would have been 31. When I was 31, we went to Budapest, and I found out a couple of things. First of all, she was 5 years older than she was supposed to be, because we rented a car and her driver's license told the truth. And then I think on the trip I found out I was Jewish. We were in Budapest for I think 3 weeks.
That sounds like a life-changing trip for you.
Well, that trip, just to give you some background, my mother was, as she said, a decorator in New York, but she was later on a travel agent as well. So she asked me if I would join her on the trip to Budapest, because my father didn't want to go. But it wasn't just Budapest. We flew to Vienna, drove to Budapest, drove to Munich to visit a friend, then drove to Frankfurt, Germany, and took a flight to Hong Kong. That was part of the travel agency trip to go to Hong Kong, and then from Hong Kong we flew to London. So that was the whole 3 weeks.
And you had to pretend to be her husband.
And I had to, I was supposed to be her husband.
He was kind of young, but he made the job.
You are very clever, aren't you? Yeah.
And then my ex-wife asked, where's Peter? So she called my father, who didn't want to go. And he says, well, he's in Hong Kong. I says, is Hong Kong near Germany? I'm divorced from her.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, she's not familiar with a map very much. No. But to be fair to her, that is a kind of a circuitous way to get all around that part of the world.
Yeah.
Landing in Vienna, driving to Budapest, and then flying to Hong Kong, and then back to Europe.
Yes.
Yeah. So. So I want to get back to some of your story. You've done a lot of things. You've seen a lot of things in your life. What advice would you give the rest of us to just help us be more successful in our lives?
Well, as I said, don't let yourself talk out of any plans you have, what you might made for your future, and be smart.
Yeah. So if you have a vision, go for it.
Yes, yes.
That's great advice. That's great advice. Well, Eva, I really appreciate you coming in and talking with us today.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure and an honor. You can catch this podcast and the rest of our podcast anywhere where podcasts are found, and the Bake More Pies social media, as well as the Law of Relevancy social media. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.